A Bloodbath in the Border Princes, Part 7, The Path of Destiny. Blood pounded in Korgir's head as the sounds of battle faded from the field. He still felt weak from the attention of teens, but this had not dulled his senses. Hungry ogres had attacked Korgir's raiding party, and found their potential meals much less pliant. It had been a difficult fight, but both sides had drawn blood and were drawn. The ogres would bother the beast herd no longer, although this meant that the herd had dallied in their pursuit of a troll. The gods had brought them there for a reason. Sometime later, Korgir would find out the truth. The troll, the subject of their recent adventure, had been brought into the beast herd through magics and coercion. The massive, lumpen, misshapen creature had been touched by chaos, and thus it had been a natural fit for the beastmen. Korgir smiled when he himself had daubed the final runes on the beast's great misshapen head. It smiled a broken, crooked smile, one that promised of the violence yet to come. Thorgrim awoke with a jolt. Instinctively, his hand went for a knife to defend himself, and when he fully came to, he found his strange new gift grasping his eating blade. The vision, or perhaps the nightmare, spoke of pain and pleasure that was his for the taking, and it had woken him with a fright. His new gift, an arm, a scaled, tentacle-like arm, was a gift from the god Slaneesh, in recognition for his slaying of a great beast, a spidery creature from the forests. Thorgrim had never imagined he would follow the path of excess, but the time away from the hard, brutal north had changed his perspective. The southerners, in their softness, enjoyed numerous delights and pleasures, and the longer Thorgrim spent in the south, the more accustomed he grew to them. Slaneesh, for reasons unbeknownst to Thorgrim, had lured his warband up to the mountains in the north. Weary of the dwarfs in their holes and their cannons, Thorgrim had nevertheless slain many beasts in the name of Slaneesh. Their most recent quarry, a Jabberslith, had taken refuge in something of a mountain ruin. The party of Norskins were preparing to hunt the beast, when Floki brought word of a nearby warband, bearing marks of chaos. "Beastmen," spat Floki, as he described the report to Thorgrim. Thorgrim paid him no mind, for beastmen were lesser creatures of chaos. Everyone knew that only true men could be worthwhile servants. Thus, the two leaders of the two warbands would come to entreaty. The shaman and leader of the beastmen, a creature called Korgir, had attempted to entreaty with the Norskins as brothers of chaos, but Thorgrim in his arrogance had rebuked them. He had shouted down the misshapen creatures, and demanded their fealty to the true servant of chaos. They, in turn, had rebuked them, and laughed at the small man and his even smaller warband. Thus, the two leaders had departed. That night, with its terrible dreams, had given Thorgrim an ill portent, and also clarity. Slaneesh had demanded the beastman's blood. There would be no cooperation today. The true followers of chaos would be known, not merely the misbegotten spawn. Thus, the Thorgrim bade Floki to assemble the men for war. Both the Norskins and beastmen desire each other's blood, and will settle their grievances on the field of battle, as befits true followers of chaos. Both sides have arranged in a simple linear formation, and wish to close the distance where they are strongest. The Norskins move first and advance their lines forward. In response, Korgir invokes a terrible spell to empower the Chaos Troll, which then madly charges into a unit of warriors. The spell, however, had little effect, as the sturdy Norskins merely accept the brute's charge and deal it enough wounds to send it reeling back. In response, the Norskin horsemen, led by the dependable Floki, begin to hurl their javelins and skirmish with the foe, only to receive a deadly accurate volley from the beastmen hunters in reply. This scattered the horsemen, and although Floki desperately tried to reform them, his efforts were in vain. With his horsemen defeated, and the beastman leader shielded from attack, Thorgrim sounded the horn to retreat, and his remaining warriors quit the field, leaving the beastmen braying with fury. Korgir looked upon the great mirror with a covetous glare. He had used his magics to chase away the Jabberslith, the lure of the beast forgotten once he had glimpsed the prize it was guarding. The mirror, twice as tall as a man, shined with a gleaming luster. The other beastmen dared not look upon it, but Korgir gazed into the mirror, and saw reflections of glory in the name of chaos. It would be a potent prize, and one they would lash to the Chaos Troll, with plundered ropes from the man-things. Khorne had given genesis to this warband, but now the Prince of Pleasure called to them most strongly. Far away from the battle, Thorgrim and Floki stared down at the Jabberslythe, wandering about in a valley in the mountains, in a confused and dazed state. Though they had retreated, Thorgrim's party had kept good order, and they were able to chase after the beast, leaving the beastmen to pick at its lair. This was a greater prize to them, and it called to Thorgrim strongly. Against the advice of his men, Thorgrim went out to duel the beast in single combat, and although the warrior fought for his life, he was destroyed by the beast's terrible maul. In that moment, Floki, dependable Floki, brave Floki, raced to the side of his lord and hurled his javelin at the beast and struck it through the eye, killing it. In vengeance for his fallen lord and to the cheers of their surviving men, Floki earned the right to command the Norscan warband. The saga of Thorgrim was over, finished before it even reached its crescendo, but now the saga of Floki was only just to begin. Fenton Frosthold smoked his pipe and remarked the collections of stones, planks, and sacks that the villagers had provided him with. Things had not gone well for him and his crew since leaving the Red Squirrel. They had faced hostility from their fellow dwarfs over contracts and a dearth of good-paying jobs. Some terrible fish beasts had slain some of his crew in a skirmish at a small village, and now Fenton found himself helping to defend the village of Muslak from an impending beastman attack. At first, Fenton was willing to write off the tales as excited villagers, although he would still take their gold. But then, he spied with his eyeglass a great brute of a troll with a massive mirror on its back, lumbering through the nearby forests. The beastmen had been preparing to destroy the place, and with their troll, it would be a most difficult fight. Initially, Fenton was of the mind to flee, but the desperate villagers and their gold had convinced him to stay. They had begged him to save them, and he had decided to turn his dwarfish engineering to the task. They would fortify Muslak and prepare it for the onslaught. But more importantly, Fenton thought of the mirror. A piece of that size would surely fetch a high price in Barakvar, and Fenton was nothing if not pragmatic.